trainer. She's an author of the Power BI topics published in Spanish for LinkedIn Learning and an author of the book Curso Power BI in Spanish. She's a community leader in Spain and speaker at technical events worldwide in Spanish and English. Natalia is a CEO at Nivanta Consulting, a consultant and trainer in corporate finance focused on business intelligence. Natalia specialises in finance with more than 15 years of experience in planning, budgeting, financial models and cash flow control. Natalia has been a university trainer in postgraduate finance, teaching about capital markets, equities and trading. With extensive knowledge of business intelligence tools such as Power BI, Natalia applies them in financial management to facilitate decision-making to impact companies' profitability, liquidity and solvency. And the project, their session today is explaining that a BI project begins with data processing, and in this session they will look at the steps taken to clean the data for a real customer scenario using Power Query in Excel. So, with no further delays, I will play the video.
Good morning, good afternoon, good night. Hello, thanks for coming to our session. Cleaning data with Power Query is something from the real life. We are Ana BISBE and Natalia Gómez. Good morning from Madrid, Spain. Natalia, how are you?
Fine, Ana, thanks for this session. For me, it's the night. I am here in Bogota.
Okay, let's start. I'm Ana BISBE, BI consultant, Microsoft partner in Power BI, data platform MVP, and LinkedIn Learning trainer, and author of a book, Curso Power BI in Spanish. I'm a co-leader of the Power Platform Madrid meetup.
I am Natalia Gómez, CEO at Nivanta Consulting, and I work as consultant and trainer in corporate finance focused on business intelligence. I am co-leader of Bogota BI Community too. We are happy to be here ready to talk about cleaning data for business user and query editor in Excel and how we can use the large information amount that generated within the business, which can be measured, graphed, and made decisions based on data. We want to talk the Excel virtual global team for having us and the sponsors and volunteers for their help. Let's talk about the agenda for this session. We will look briefly at the definition of the ETL process in general and the ETL process in Power Query in particular. Then we will travel through the steps and actions for cleansing, enriching, and modeling data for a business case. We will look into an application of this data inside a real case. Without further, let's start.
Okay, thanks, Natalia. The ETL process is the first and basic layer of a business intelligence system. We could say it's a hidden layer. The final user who looks at the analytical reports and dashboards does not see all the stuff necessary for cleansing, filtering, and wrangling data before loading it. The ETL process is as hard to implement as necessary for the success of a BI project. All the BI process is based on a good or a bad ETL. Excel goes through the 3 steps of the ETL process. Extract data from files or folders, database, scripts, cloud, or many other sources. Then, using Power Query Editor, we can transform imported data, but doing data quality tags, filtering by rows and columns, formatting original data as tables, combining queries, and doing several different transformations, like, for example, pivot on pivot, fill, and transpose. After that, Excel can load data into Power Pivot tabular model, creating relationships between loaded tables. Then it's our goal to refine the model depending on the tool we are using. In this session, we are talking about Microsoft Excel. As soon as we finish all the ETL and modeling tasks, we are ready to start creating, sharing, and consuming reports and dashboards in Excel. Okay, it's time for the first demo. A BI project begins with the data processing. In this session, we will see the steps I had to take to clean the data in a real customer scenarios using the Power Query in Excel. The first approach could be a direct load from Excel to the tabular model. If we look at the Power Pivot menu, here we have a Manage button, and from the table, from the information in our Excel, we could add tables to the model. In this case, we are creating the connections, but here we have no queries. And this is not sustainable because we do not have any actions over data. So the second approach, the second try here could be from the table to query and then to model. Here we have the queries I did before. And if we edit, this is the Power Query in Excel, we could increase the size. This is very useful. And here we have all the queries and just the connections. This could be the first step, but it's not enough because it's necessary to look at the values and granular data. The data analyst should solve the data quality problems. Okay, let's look at the queries for the first steps. Here we have the queries, and oh, I need to close this one first. Okay, now we have the queries here, and I'm able to open these windows. Okay, let's increase again. For example, if we look at the product, we can see that the last two positions from product ID are unnecessary. The best solution is to clean as much as possible. I'm using extract first characters, in this case, first 8 characters. For warehouses, I'm looking at acronym. Here we can see that the quality is not good. There are uppercases and lowercases letters. There are repeated values. In this case, for example, this is a mistake. And other problems with these columns. The first step here is to transform, to clean the data for these columns. For example, uppercase, extract first characters, add the conditional columns. In this case, we will look at the contents of warehouse name and acronym columns. We are checking both columns, and depending on the content of these columns, we will select one or other value as a result. And then we are able to remove the columns with donates and renames, and now it's okay. Now it's clean, it's ready for the model. It's different than we have had before. In this case, also for the main table, for the main query, we are reading off the last two characters also for the product ID, as I did before. And also we need to look at the price and cost, because there's a lot of position of decimal position, and the best solution here is to round it to 2 position, for example, 2 decimal position here. In that case, it's important to look at the data, and select the best options. And also, of course, I need to ask my colleague Natalia which level of detail of granularity it's important for the business. Okay, let's see the last step here will be looking at the model. Okay, I need to close again. I need to close here. And then the last one, we are looking at the model. Now we are the business, the engineer, the data engineer looking at the model. Okay, let's see. In this case, it's important to pay attention at the tabular model. The structure just be adjusted according to an excellent tabular model, and the business requirements we face that will be answered. In this case, for example, action type, it's an independent query with just 2 columns. An entity, it's a table with more attributes, which means that action type isn't a good entity for a tabular model. For this reason, the best choice here is to merge 2 queries, action type and main, using the left outer type of join. We have here the merging action, the merging steps, 2 queries, and we will join between this command column, and then we will take the value from action type. Okay, let's see. Here we have the result. Here is a table for each values. I will increase the size. Okay, now we will see. And then expand. Now we have the value. It's like a VLOOKUP action between the two queries. Then it's interesting because in this case we have 2 columns with information about the data and the date and time the action it's done. But the detected data type is integer and decimal. It's important to convert to the date and data type. Now it's okay. If the information about the time isn't relevant for the analysis, we should extract date and forget about the time. Now we detect that both columns have the same data, and we could and should read off one of them. In this case, it's important to ask to Natalia, to the business user, about the importance, about the role of each columns. Okay, now I remove the columns and now I'm ready. And the last step, it's time for the calendar table. Almost all scenarios need a calendar table. In this case, I'm using a parameter with the start point, with the initial date, the start date, and also I'm using a function. If we see, we could see the content for the function, and the idea is for our calendar, the action that we need is to invoke. We need to decide which amount of dates, how many dates we need to create for our calendar and invoke the function. After that, we have the list of with all the values for our days. We need to convert to table, rename the column, change type, and then add some needed attributes like year, month, and for example, week or whatever. All the tasks are done, and now let's see the model from the Power Pivot windows. Okay, let's close. We have Power Pivot menu, manage, and this will be our model. This is different than before because we have now just one fact table, main table, and 3 dimensions, products, warehouses, and calendar. So Excel travels through the 3 steps of the ETL process. Extract data from the Excel tables, transform data with Power Query, and load data to the tabular model in Power Pivot. That's all from my side. It's my pleasure to introduce my colleague, Natalia. Natalia will discuss the solution from the business point of view.
Thanks, Anna, for your explanation of this data model. It's important to understand clearly how we can use the Excel tools to give all this transformation for obtain the final tabular model. And finally, as final user or analyst, that we need to complete the information and we need to give an answer to a question generally done by management or middle managers too. So let's continue with this second part. First of all, a data analyst must have the ability to understand which are the needs, questions, or problems to be solved with a data model, in this case, delivered by the data engineer. In this case, the finance manager needs to find options to improve the gross margin. So right now we are going with the data model. And we are going to explain which are the steps, the step-by-step as how can we take from the data model. Then we need, as I told you before, as analysts, I must know which measures or which calculations we need to find. I'm going to talk about the steps to get to the visualization of a dashboard that allow us to find a solution to the question done by the user. Well, we start with the data model that we found in Power Pivot. Then the analyst with knowledge of the business, and in this specific case of indicators that help us measure inventory management. With the use of DAX measures, we are customizing those calculations that we must obtain based on, of course, on the data offered by the tabular model. For this case, I'm talking about values such as initial stock, final stock, total sales, days of inventory, cost of sales, and inventory turnover. The model also provides relevant information regarding warehouse movements such as purchases, sales, returns, cancellations, and defective products, among others, for which we use the pivot tables to see in a summarized and clear way those factors that are negative affecting the sales cost. And finally, we have the raw material to build our control panel with dynamic graphics, the final product that will serve to management for decision making. The design of a dashboard must have the following conditions. The first one is to answer questions quickly. The second one is that the end user must to interpret the graphs that allow him to make decisions with a clear information. You should try to have the relevant information in one place. And the last one is that we need to have all this information. It will be clear, direct, and concise. Now let's see the final dashboard in Excel. Here we have the dashboard that must contain clear and specific information. First of all, it must have segments that allow us to see the information of the graphs in different months and even years. It's necessary for the analyst to see the evolution of the behavior of sales, the cost, gross margin, and of course, inventory and turnover indicators. In this case, we are going to navigate with the time, the month. We can select the different year. For example, in this case here, I am selecting the 2017 year. And when we are put the giving click of a different month, the information must to change. As I told you before, we need to analyze to see the evolution of the numbers through the time. Then the graphs must tell us a story that allows us to go deeper and deeper into the data until we find the correct answer. For this case, we go from the general information, we evaluate what results we obtain, and then we begin to find a common thread until we reach the solution. The first graph where it shows us the movements of inventories. It is evident that after the sales, the second movement that is affecting the cost of sales is the defective products. This is our starting point to ask the following questions. For example, which supplier sells those products? The other question can be, what are those products? How important is or are these suppliers that are selling spoiled products? Let's navigate through this dashboard. For example, we have the segmenters here, such as year, for example, and month. If I click, for example, in this case, in the first year and go through January, for example, we can see how the numbers change in targets, for example, total sales, cost of sales, gross margin, and we can see how the graphs change too with the numbers. February, March, and we can see too how in this table, which main indicators, for example, the initial stock change too with total sales. For example, here in total sales, we see, for example, this number is the same in this target of this card. And for example, the cost of sales too is the same information. And the important thing here is how the analyst can see the evolution of the numbers. And in this case, we can see, for example, the problem that this model can identify. For example, the inventory movements can show us how the defective products are the second factor that affects the cost of sales. And if we take actions, for example, in these movements of defective, for example, if we go to the suppliers, which suppliers are giving us that defective products, which products are the most defective situations. Of course, if we take actions of this, we can improve the gross margin and we are giving an answer to the management. Anna, this is the ending of our business solution. So let's talk about the conclusions.
Thanks, Natalia. It's a great job, great dashboard. I think that will be very useful for the business users. So let's see some conclusions on our presentation. The ETL process is the first step in the BI process. Also, for the Excel tool, we did all our work using Microsoft Excel. And data engineering solution includes extract, clean up, to model and to enrich the original data.
And the conclusion for the business solution for this question is that how the company can improve its gross margin. So we can see in the dashboard that is to increase the product's inspection when arrived to warehouses and establish quality control dynamics, in addition to having a permanent analysis of the data to have greater opportunities for improvement.
Fantastic. We have some resources to study more about Excel and Power Query. There are some books, there are more books, and it's all for us. Thank you very much for attending this session. If you have any questions, we are ready to talk about Excel, about BI, about Power Query, and about answering business questions using Microsoft Excel. It was my pleasure. Thank you, Natalia, for joining me in this session.
Thanks, Anna. Thanks to all for assisting to this session.
Goodbye. Hi, hello, everyone.
Hi. Thanks to Anna and Natalia for that. I'm just going to put Natalia live now, so you'll be able to see her any minute now. I did notice we had one question came in on the Q&A. Hi, Natalia, you're live now.
Hi.
So I'll just read it out so in case anyone else hasn't noticed it. It just takes a second for it to load up. Okay, publish. There we go. So the question is, what is your process for documenting these workflows within your organisation? I work within a small organisation and this all looks helpful, but I worry how easily the next staff replacing me will be able to replace these flows. So if someone else is taking over from you, how can they tell what's going on?
Okay. Thanks for the questions. Thanks for the question. If we are looking at Excel, Excel goes through the 3 steps of the ETL. So the first step is the transform imported data. So my first step was to see the data and to clean. So we are looking at the values, we are looking at the empty values, repeated values, and we are looking at the ground values. So we are looking to the mistakes, we are looking to the quality of the data. So it's important for us to do the first step, look at the data and doing all the transformations, all these steps for guaranteeing the quality of the data. Then we need to look at the model. When we are working in Excel or, for example, Power BI, we need to develop a tabular model for our analysis. Power Pivot in Excel or the tabular model in Power BI. And at this time, we are looking at entities and attributes. So the first moment is look at the quality, and the second, look at the model. It's important to create an effective model because we need to look at the optimization, we need to look at the at the times consuming all the queries. So in our example, we found several mistakes, several problems in the data. Then when we start looking at the model, we, for example, clean the date and time columns. Date and times column are columns very consuming. So it's important to rid off the time half of the columns if we don't need it. So, and then for us, for example, was important to create a calendar table. This is the last step, because if we are working with a time analysis, so we are looking at the evolution on a time, we need to, it's better to have a calendar table. And the Power Query has the ability of create from nothing a table using the M language functions. And in our example was a function which was taking the value for the parameters. We are able to work using parameters inside the Power Query. And then the calendar type, the table was created because most all of the scenarios need a tabular table. So that were all the tasks we were doing using Power Query in Excel for cleansing, transforming, wrangling data, and creating tabular model. Hope this helps, and if you have any other question, I'm ready. Now, Natalia will explain the process for the business perspective.
Thanks, Anna. So the next step is to have, when we have a real and a not real a model, so the next step is to have the measure. So which things we want to know, which measures we want to know, the calculations. So I think that when we have a model established, we can continue with the graphics. So in these cases, we need to answer the questions and to parameter the indicators. In this case, with inventories, we must to have in the main things is, for example, the rotation, the turnover in the inventory, the movements when, for example, when we have sales, when we have purchases, devolutions. So the main thing is to parameter and to make a solution with all the things, with all the needs to the inventory management must to know. I think that we need to establish in the solution is all the parameters, the measures, mainly in this case with the solution made with DAX, with the DAX language. I don't know if you need to add any more, Anna, with this question.
No, it's fine. It's good. The idea is to extract all the importance of our data, to clean as much as possible, to prepare a model, and to do that way that we will be able to answer all the requirements from the business point of view, as you did in your example. Yes.
Exactly.
Well, thank you. That was a very thorough explanation. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine.
For someone who's new to Power Query, have you got any tips for how they should go about starting to learn to use it in a real business scenario? That's for either of you. So Richard, Anna, have you got any tips?
Yes, Power Query is a best tool for transforming data. The idea is when we are using Power Query inside Excel, we're able to repeat, to update data and just repeat all these steps. Power Query is like it's a tool that remember all that we need before. It's interesting because if we create a good steps, a good query, for the next month, we will be able to do the same. So it's sustainable, it's safely work with Power Query. So the idea is use the power of Power Pivot in Excel, but before that, let's clean and prepare good tabular model in Power Query.
Excellent, thank you. Anything you'd like to add, Natalia, or has Anna covered it?
No, that's all. Thanks.
Okay, brilliant. Well, thank you, ladies. That was a great presentation. It was good to see the flow all the way through, right through from cleaning the data all the way through to the dashboard and answering the questions, which is even more important. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you to all.
Enjoy. Bye bye.
Bye. Okay, I've put the evaluations form up now. So if you'd like to send an evaluation for that presentation or any other presentation, either use the QR code on the screen or the bit.ly link underneath. Thank you.